too big of a deal. Unlike my other classes, you guys will not have a practice test. The reason why you will not have a practice test, because some of the questions are true-false type of questions. If I give you a practice test, then you know the answer already for the actual exam. So you will only have, unless you guys prefer essay questions, then I can give you a practice test. Or better yet, if you guys prefer take-home exams, I can give you practice tests too. Okay? And you might think, take-home exams, that's the best thing that ever happens, right? Well, when I give people take-home exams, it usually means, yes, the whole class can work on it together. It would not make any difference. That's when I give people take-home exams. It's like, yep, you guys can all work together as one big group of 40 students. It would not make any difference. Write a research paper on, how data encryption affects, copyright enforcement and blah 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 blah. And you have to conform to the standards of the research papers, quote accordingly and whatnot. Yep. So one person's job is just going to make sure that the quotes are all in the right format. That will be one person's job entirely. It's just to check that and make sure that happens. For a fee. Well, you guys can work out the pricing, amongst yourselves. It's a free market, right? All right. So what we'll do today is continue to talk about the topics we left off from last time, but no one seemed to care about, but what are you guys going to be quizzed on? I mean, do you guys care?
I care.
Okay, very good. Do you guys care back there? Yes? Okay. All right. So it's going to be on chapters 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so those 3 chapters definitely will be in the test from next week. And it is not limited to stuff that I talk about in the class. It is only limited to the stuff that the textbook has. If you guys have questions about the material in chapters 3, 4, and 5, you have next Tuesday to ask those questions. Or you can come to my office hour and ask me in person, or you can send me an email and ask me through email. Okay? But I think 1 week is plenty of time for you guys to ask questions about those 3 chapters. Okay? And are there any questions about the test? Now,
good advice to practice like the section.
Yep, definitely would not hurt.
All these exercises that are in the book is helpful.
Yep, definitely it would not hurt. Okay, if you have time to do it, it is good. If you don't have time to do it, try your best just to study the text material. The test is open book, open notes. Now, do you guys have any questions back there? If you have questions, I can try to answer those questions. If you have comments to share with the class, that's more than welcome. Okay?
So we can use our book when we get our exam?
Excuse me?
We can use our textbook when we take our
Yes,
exam?
it is open book, open notes. Yep.
That doesn't include open peers?
No open peers. It's going to be a paper-based, test. I wanted it to be available so that you guys can take it at a lab. But during this time, the lab is really busy. And this class is still kind of big. We are not as big as some of my other classes, but it's still big enough that we cannot fit into one single section. So that's why we cannot have the test in the lab. So instead, I'll give you like paper. And since it's all multiple choice, fill in the blanks, and true false type, it's pretty easy. There's no need to bring your Scantron. Okay, everything is going to be done on the paper itself. After I grade your paper, I will give it back to you, and you get to keep it. Okay, because every time I teach this class, I will probably be using different questions, so you can pass those questions along to your friends, your family, and whatnot. It would not, change anything. Sell it on eBay, exactly. But you don't want to mention that tech always comes up with new questions every semester. just neglect to mention that. Okay, here's the thing. Now, with the exam being open book, open notes, and you have 1 week to study, and you can bring any additional material that is either printed or handwritten prior to the test, that means, if you spend enough time to look up something, you will get the answer. So how am I going to gauge, this student is better than the other student, academically speaking? Well, I'm going to give you enough questions, okay? so that people who already know the material, people who study the textbook, people who ask questions in the class, people who pay attention will be able to do the questions faster. And people who do not pay attention in the class, people who miss classes, like people who are not currently here but on the roster, and that means people who are probably listening to the lecture right now but not in the class physically. So those people probably would not be able to answer the questions nearly as quickly. So the aim of the test is so that those people will not be able to get full score. Okay? So I do not hide my objective. The objective is to differentiate people who know the material better than the other people. Okay? Are there any questions? Any comments? Any people want to drop the class now? Yes? Yep.
Not just kidding. I have one classmate who said the class, and he's so confident about the class. And I said, well, and then he told me he's taken that class 3 times already. So I guess he knew what to expect from it. Oh, okay, that explains it, right?
Well, I can tell you this much. With my classes, someone can be taking it the 4th time, and they will still going like, oh man, I have to drop the class again. When is the last day to drop without a W? Yep. Well, but this class is not one of those classes. I'm more or less referring to assembly language programming. That sort of classes. Because with assembly language programming, it is all about the concepts. But not just the concepts. Someone needs a lot of practice to get that stuff down, to understand and actually be able to answer questions in a test. With this class, most of the stuff is already here. Okay, it is only a matter of reading it. Okay, reading it, make sure you understand it. What if there's something here that you don't understand? Okay, let's take a quick look, and I will give you an example. I'll give you an example in, say, chapter 4. I flip open to a particular page, and it says right here, what is a file format? Okay, the term file format refers to the organization and layout of data that is stored in the file, blah blah blah, and it has GIF, JPEG, and PNG as bitmaps. Okay, so what if I ask you a question like, what is the full name of PNG? PNG is an abbreviation of what? Okay, what do? You go to the index, right? Look up PNG and find the answer. Okay. Now, when you're studying, what do? When you're studying and there's a term that you encounter, you don't understand it, and it doesn't seem to be explained elsewhere in the textbook, what do? Yep, you Google it. Okay, you Google it, or you go to Wikipedia, even better. Okay, Wikipedia tends to give you too much information with respect to the level of this class, but nonetheless, there's information out there, and you can easily look for those particular answers. Okay, how many people have a phone that can go onto the internet? Okay, how many people know where the computer lab is located? The computer is located over there. It is room 152. So there's no excuse and say, but I don't have internet access. Well, you do now. You can go to the library, you can go to the LRC. There are a lot of resources on campus that allows you to go online and look for information. Okay? So I know there's a lot of pages to read from chapter 3 to chapter 5, 3 chapters. Yep, go ahead.
You said open book and open notes and open material, right?
Open material, just no live communication during the test, and you cannot use a computer during the test. Okay? I know some of you have laptop computers and you want to use a laptop computer during the test, but I cannot assume everyone has access to one, so I cannot allow the use of electronic stuff.
Our notes are on our laptop.
You have to print it out prior to the test. I know it is a hassle. This question comes up with my other classes as well. And, as a computer person, I personally do not like, paper stuff because it gives me paper cuts. So, I would much rather an electrical shock than a paper cut. But I cannot assume everybody in the class has access to a laptop computer that they can bring to the class. And since a laptop computer or an electronic, media reader does give that person certain advantages, like you can search through stuff a lot faster. You can go online and look for stuff. So I cannot, allow the use of, a resource that only certain people have access to, and it does give certain people a certain advantage. Okay. Now, my other student in my other class, said, but that means, I'll be at a disadvantage because I am more used to electronic stuff than I'm used to paper stuff. Well, you know what? I would much rather take that risk, having this person to complain to the dean and say, well, I think I'm getting discriminated here because I'm used to typing and searching online, and, Dr. Tech wants me to use paper-based, approach when I take a test. So I would much rather have this person to complain to the dean rather than people who say, well, I don't have access to a computer, that I can bring to the class. I don't have enough money to buy a computer. I cannot borrow one. I do not have access to one. And these other people with access to a computer have a certain advantage over, my, resources. And, I want to file a complaint. So to me, it is a matter of, weighing, which complaint do I have to worry more about. I mean, I'm definitely honest with you guys, okay? I can see, complaints coming in either way. So the question is, which one I think I can get away with, easier. It's never easy to get away from complaints. It's just a matter of which one is easier to get away from. Okay. So what I want to do is to give you a non-assignment, even though it says it's an assignment, it is not. Okay, because I want you guys to practice or be able to see what HTML looks like. Okay, now the textbook does give you, a whole bunch of stuff in chapter 6. In other words, this stuff will not be in the test. Is it chapter 6? Nope, it's chapter 7 now. So chapter 6 is not going to be in the test. If I give you any questions in chapter 6, you can quote me because, this, class is recorded. So you guys can actually point to the video clip and say, but Tech, you said on the 23rd, 6 minutes into the class, you said that chapter 6 will not be in the test. Okay, so the recording gives you, that ability, and you can just, say, but Tech, you're contradicting with yourself. Okay, so if you go to page, web page authoring, which is on page 369 of your textbook, it talks about, HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Okay, M stands for markup. And it gives you, on the following page, on page 370, it gives you, the tags, when you see the open angle bracket and the closed angle bracket, each one of those is called what we call a tag, T-A-G tag. And, it gives you a basic, idea of what HTML documents really look like. And there are people who can write, who can construct HTML documents by typing all that gibberish, using a plain text editor. Okay, it's not really hard. The first time you look at it, it goes like, wow, that's kind of cryptic. But the more you practice with this, the more you use it, then the more you'll realize, hey, this is not bad at all. I mean, there's a certain structure to it, and there are only so many tags that you really need to memorize on a daily basis. Really usual tags that you use on a daily basis. For other stuff that is really fancy, there are also HTML editors of all kinds that you can use. There's also a software like Microsoft Word or OpenOffice Writer. They are word processing software. Okay. In other words, remember what I said about word processing software? It is a software typewriter, right? Except these software can also save a document as HTML. Now that's great because now you have a letter that you wrote, for something, or you have a paper that you wrote for something, and if you want to publish it on the web, you can just go to the file menu, and either you pick save as HTML in certain types of word processors, or you can say export to HTML in other types of editors. Then you can create an HTML document that is more or less the same as the original document.